This is a memorandum for President Donald J. Trump. And the subject that we're going to be treating here is how we're combating the fentanyl crisis as a national and foreign policy priority. And us, as his foreign policy advisors, we think that this issue needs to be addressed by the United States of America government. Fentanyl is a very potent synthetic opioid drug that is usually used by medical professionals as an analgesic and an anesthetic. This drug is approximately 100 times stronger than morphine and 50 times stronger than heroin as an analgesic. And its effects range from relaxation, pain relief, and euphoria to confusion, vomiting, and respiratory depression, according to the DEA. And this is not the first wave of opioid deaths that the US has gone through. It is actually the third, but this one is the most recent and deadliest wave, which began back in 2013. This makes it a crucial matter of security and health, not only for the American government, but also for its citizens, who are being the real and most hurt victims of it all. Back in 2021, overdose deaths surpassed 100,000, with 67% of those deaths involving fentanyl, according to the Congress. And most of the fentanyl in the United States is smuggled across the Mexican border. The average amount that gets seized at the border is just 1.2 kilograms, and these batches tend to contain more than 50,000 lethal doses of this drug, according to the Council of Foreign Relations. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials, as well as the Drug Enforcement Administration, or the DEA, have pointed out that even though fentanyl seizes are a current occurrence, that the actual amount seized is estimated to be somewhere between 10 and 15% of the overall amount of the drug that is being introduced into our country. So it's a very small percentage. And China is a leading manufacturer of fentanyl ingredients, which are known as precursor chemicals. However, Mexican drug cartels, especially the Sinaloa cartel and the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, or CJNG, are the leaders in the production and distribution of the actual drug. The smuggling of fentanyl into American territory is usually on charge of American citizens. Between 2019 and 2023, more than 86% of fentanyl traffickers were US citizens. And well, this happens because cartels hire American citizens to do so, because they won't catch as much attention from US officials, or they won't raise as much suspicion as maybe a Mexican person would. And this issue is of great importance to the United States of America, not only for the obvious health crisis that the country is facing due to the use and overdosing of this drug and all of the deaths and expenses that are associated with it, but also because this fentanyl crisis points out the obvious and worrying border security issue that exists between the United States of America and Mexico. The amount of fentanyl that is able to cross the border and then be sold and consumed inside of American territory shows a weakness in the American customs and border protection, as well as in the policy bodies that serve the whole state. This crisis is also a big threat to American diplomatic relations with both Mexico and China, given the fact that these two states are key players and enablers in this crisis. And unless some action is taken, relations could be greatly impacted. And without a doubt, the American government needs to take whatever action is necessary to combat this crisis.
Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to preview today what happens. The United States is facing a national emergency, not just a health crisis, but a transnational threat. The fentanyl epidemic has become the deadliest wave of opioid abuse in American history. In 2021 alone, over 100,000 Americans died from overdoses, and nearly 17% of those cases involved fentanyl. This drug is not produced in the United States. It is manufactured in China and processed into deadly form by American cartels, primarily el Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación and the Sinaloa Cartel. These organizations exploit our southern border and rely on American citizens as couriers to bypass law enforcement. Meanwhile, our seizure rates at the border capture only a fraction, an estimated to 10 to 15% of what's actually getting through. Mr. President, our team recommends a realist-based foreign policy response. First, we must designate these cartels as foreign terrorists, as we've done. This gives us a broader authority for extraterritorial action. Second, we should deploy precision drone strikes and a special operation against cartel targets in Mexico. Third, we must sanction Chinese chemical companies and disrupt their digital infrastructure with cyber operations. Finally, I propose deploying the National Guard in key border sectors to support direct interdiction and intelligence collection. This is a strategy rooted in realism, in the belief that international system, as we know, is anarchic, and that we must act decisively to defend ourselves. We cannot rely on Mexico's weak institution or on Chinese empty diplomatic promises. We must act unilaterally and with overwhelming strength to reassert control, protect our people, and dismantle this threat at the source. Cartels, traffickers, and their foreign suppliers are betting on the U.S. in action. It is time we show them what American resolve looks like.
Mr. President, this devastating national security and public health crisis is getting out of control, with overdose deaths now exceeding 100,000 per year and fentanyl involved in over two-thirds of those deaths. The crisis is real. This highlights a major vulnerability in both our border security and foreign policy. The proposed tragedy centers on emphasizing hard power and unilateral action that my colleague already spoke about. The core benefits include, number one, calling cartels what they are, terrorist organizations. This lets us use the full power of U.S. intelligence and military to go after them even outside our borders. Number two, using drone strikes and special forces in Mexico to take out key cartels' targets and break up their operations where they start. Number three, punishing Chinese companies that send chemicals used to make fentanyl by hitting them with sanctions and cyber attacks to shut them down. And lastly, sending more National Guard troops to the border to stop illegal fentanyl shipments before they get into our country. Mr. President, this tragedy is bold. It puts American lives first by taking swift, decisive action, without waiting for unreliable foreign partners to catch up. It's about strength, deterrence, and protecting our people. But there are serious drawbacks. From a liberal internationalist view, acting alone, especially with military force, risks damaging our relationship with key countries like Mexico or China. Even with the best intentions, crossing into another nation's territory can spark dangerous tensions and set precedents that can come back to haunt us. Critics also point out that fentanyl is a global problem, and global problems need global solutions. We've already seen progress through cooperation, working with groups like the UN, Interpol, and through initiatives like the Merida Initiative. The US has poured billions into these partnerships because they can work. Pushing harder now could put all that risk at risk, not just diplomacy, but trade and fragile agreements, like those recently made at the APEC summit, where both China and Mexico promised to step up efforts against fentanyl. So here's the choice. The realist path offers speed and force, but risks breaking the rules that hold the global system together. The liberal path builds alliances and long-term solutions, but it's been slow and people are still dying. Mr. President, the real question is this. Are we ready to take the heat on the world stage to stop the crisis now? Or do we stay the course, hoping that cooperation will catch up before more lives are lost? Thank you, Mr. President.